Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. John Lord, Vice President of STEM Education here at Science Olympiad, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the virtual boot camp um, pre-recorded session for Fossils, which is an Earth and Space science event that's done by students in middle school and high school, so our divisions B and C. The objectives for this video is I want to review the event, want to talk about some skills that I think if kids have, makes things go easier for the event. We'll highlight some important things to know about the event, and I think some things that don't often get overlooked in the rules. We'll highlight changes to the event. We'll also talk about resources you can use with students. Uh, Spend a little bit of time talking about student characteristics. And this, I think, is helpful for coaches as you try and decide, hey, what's the right blend of kids to have to this event? It also can help you think about, hey, what am I looking for if I'm trying to bring kids, I'm trying to recruit, and I'm trying to build up my Science Olympiad team as well. And last but not least, we'll spend some time looking at some preparation strategies. Now, disclaimer for everything at boot camp, and in particular this session, all this information and everything you're going to see here was prepared using draft rules. That means there are still some ongoing changes, and there may be some subtle changes to them before they're released. So please keep that in mind. Also, that means in September, you're going to want to go to the Science Olympiad website and download the official rules. It's the rules that you download that will be used for all the tournaments in the 2025 competition season. Last but not least, just making it clear that the comments and the information I'm providing and sharing are how I think about an event and what matters to me if I were coaching. I think there's a lot of different ways to approach these events. There's a lot of different ways to coach and work with children. All of them very valid. So hopefully I'm going to give you a couple ideas that maybe things you haven't thought about or you haven't tried that you may find useful or interesting. Now, having said all that, let's get into fossils. This is a core knowledge Earth and space science event. That means essentially we're giving the kids a list of topics that they need to learn about. They have from the time that list comes out until they start competing at tournaments to learn that information. So technically, if you want to get into it, the objective here is we want students to demonstrate their ability to identify and classify fossils, as well as understand ancient life, past environments, and past ecosystems. Now, I think this event requires kind of three skills from students, right? It's a core knowledge event. So I'm sure if you, depending on where you are and watching videos, right? If you're going to watch other core knowledge event videos, you're going to hear me talk about this. If you've watched them already, you're probably sick of me hearing talking about this. But the key to core knowledge is the kids need to be able to research and they need to be able to organize the information. That's what will, in a lot of ways, make them successful. Now, they can develop those skills during the event, but as I said, if they already have them, that can be effective and can be helpful. Also, if they're still developing them or they're not quite there yet, that also can be reasons why kids are struggling, right? They may be struggling to find information on a particular topic. They may be struggling to figure out after finding that information, really, what should they take away from it? What should they write down? So that's something as a coach to kind of keep an eye on. And last but not least, I think, again, given the scope of fossils, right, and the whole idea of geological time and both the the range and size you can get from the different organisms that may be fossilized and all of that, right? You want students that have an appreciation for scale, right? That they have an idea about the age of the earth and what geologic time could look like. Also, they can kind of, estimate in their heads, like, okay, appreciate how big, a dinosaur could potentially be, or how small could some of these organisms that are fossilized be, right? So I think having at least one of the students that understands and appreciates scale can be helpful for this event. Now, everything about Science Olympiad starts and ends with the rules. So first thing you want to do is make sure you got the right rules. When you got the right rules, here's how I tackle them. I always start in the upper right-hand corner. I want to check out the event icon. This event icon tells me it's a core knowledge event. That means that, like I said earlier, students are given a list of topics. They have to then study those topics and get ready to answer questions when they come to the tournament. Once I know kind of an idea of what I'm looking for and what's going to be going on in this event, I turn my attention to the event parameters. Event parameters are important for core knowledge because they're going to tell me the resources that students can bring into the event, right? As well as what kind of calculators they're allowed to use, if any. Then probably the most important section for a core knowledge event is the competition. And that's twofold because one, the competition section is going to talk about how the event should be run. And that's going to explain to you whether it's going to be just strictly paper and pencil, or the kid's going to move from station to station around the room. Are there going to be specimens and samples that they're going to interact with? Like what's going to be out there? Is it just strictly going to be pictures? You may also see information about the kinds of questions, right? So are we talking, will there be application questions? Will there be interpretation of data? Will the kids have to draw conclusions about things? Or is it just strictly identification and recall? All that stuff is addressed in the competition section. Then also addressed in the competition section is the event content. So these are the things the kids need to know. Then moving on, always have the kids go to section 5 or the end for scoring, right? Almost, it's a core knowledge event. High score is going to win. But why I keep talking about this section is just like every core knowledge event tells you high score wins, right? Every core knowledge event will tell you that tiebreakers are selected questions on the exam. Make sure your kids know to ask about what the tiebreakers are. I think it's a very important strategy going in to make sure they do not leave that event, right? Leaving tiebreaker questions unanswered. Even if that means they skip over questions to get to tiebreaker questions. I've seen it at tournaments where teams have gotten the exact same score, and the difference came down to the fact that team A was only able to answer 3 of the tiebreakers, where team B went ahead and got to tiebreakers 4 and 5. And they won because of tiebreakers 4 and 5. So it can make a difference. And last but not least, for this kind of event, there's also an official list you want to make sure you have. The official list will be published in the rules manual with the rules for the event, but you want to make sure the kids have a copy of that as well. Now, some stuff to know about this list, right? First and foremost, right? You need to know the fossil list, right? That's what's published in the rules. Here's an interesting fact about classification, right? It sometimes is still changing. We're learning new things about all these organisms, even though they have long since left this planet, right? As we collect and learn new things, sometimes we shift how we think about them and we shift how the classification goes, right? So that means depending upon your source and depending upon where you're looking, you may see things that don't match. So the Science Olympiad fossil list may not match with some online sites, right? It may not match with some published fossil guides or, field guides. That's to be expected, right? So, but here's the important thing that everybody's got to understand. What's on Science Olympiad's list is what is official, right? We do not care about all the changes, right? We're going with what we've published on our fossil list, and we try really, really hard to make sure we're as up to date as we possibly can on the fossils list. Now, having said that, if we totally blow it and totally get something wrong, we'll issue a clarification. So definitely check out and make sure you're paying attention to the clarifications and the FAQs that are getting listed on the Science Olympiad website. You'll also see if a clarification gets issued for an event, right? We will also post the notice of that on that event page. Now, in fossils, you get to bring in a binder, and the earth science people are being super, super nice because you can bring in a binder of any size. Now, that means just because you can bring in the largest possible binder you can carry, right? That doesn't take away from making sure the students prepare and study and work. And in fact, I think honestly, the bigger binder they're allowed to use the harder it becomes to use that binder, because they can just continue to put information and information and information in. This is where this idea about being able to be organized becomes really, really important. And also this idea of the concept of being able to censor themselves, right? They do not need to have every possible reference about, let's say, I don't know, a shark tooth, right? They don't need to learn about, have like 16 different pages telling them about shark teeth, right? Especially when all 16 pages maybe are probably telling them the exact same thing. This is a place where, as a coach, right, particularly with the young guys, helping helping them kind of censor themselves and edit themselves can be a huge help. Another important thing to know about this event, it's not just about identification, right? And I think because there's a list and because there's a lot of scientific names and all the rest of that, it's just like, okay, all I'm going to do is like flash the fossil and have to tell people stuff about the fossil. No, there's other things going on here, right? The questions can focus on the fossil formation. They can focus on the environment that that organism might have been in. They could talk about, based on the information you see with the fossil, what's that organism's role in a food web, right? How does it fit into larger things? Depending upon the fossil and what you're looking at, what's the form of mobility for this fossil or this organism prior to becoming a fossil? All those kind of questions and that kind of analysis are fair game in this event, and actually are probably going to make up more of the test and more of the event than just a straight up, hey, here's a picture, here's a sample, what is this? Now, when it comes to changes into the event, I don't think there are really that many changes. Going through it, I noticed 2 pieces of new content, I think. If you check out section 3, paragraph E, subsection 7, part 2, right? There's a lot of stuff about radioactive dating and half-life determinations using graphs and other information, right? And very kind of simple calculations. That seems to be new for this event. And then in section 3, paragraph E, subsection 27, right? Parts 1 and parts 2, there's a whole bunch of formulas and information about calculating not only the size of the organism, but also the speed of the organism that are new, and you're going to want to pay attention to and make sure the kids are aware of, understand, and can make those calculations. The other stuff in there, it seemed to be the changes are really kind of grammar and language cleanup. It's editing. As you can imagine, the people working on the rules are not professional writers. Sometimes we use a lot of words when only 1 or 2 would be good. Also, sometimes we leave things out, right? We make assumptions, like it makes sense in our head. We figure it's going to make sense in everybody's, and it doesn't. So looks like there's been some of that kind of cleanup going on here with the rules this year. All right, when we talk about traits for the event, passionate about earth science, passionate about fossils, really excited about ancient life is really good. We talked about being organized, being researchers, readers, right? And enjoying reading and kind of learning through reading is a big thing here. The other thing I think in terms of traits and things to think about is that they understand like scale, right? And, they're good with geologic time. They're good thinking about ancient environments. So maybe even an interest in ecology and ecosystems and the relationship between the animals and the plants in an ecosystem to its ecosystem. Also could be impactful here because that's going to be part of this event. It's, again, as I said on an earlier slide, it's not only about the identification. When it comes to preparation strategies, I think it's not only the research and finding it, it's how you organize it. I'm a big advocate, and I would encourage all you coaches, if you haven't done it, it's set your own organizational system. Make the kids adapt to you, as opposed to you trying to adapt to the 18 to 20 different events and the 30, 40 kids that could represent. It also will, the other nice advantage that gives your team is because there's a common system and kids get to learn it and you get to learn it, as this event comes back around, you can recycle and you can start with the base of information you already have. You're not always going back to ground zero because nobody understands the organization system. I think it's important that the kids have the basics, and this could be a huge place that might trip kids up. And you're going, like, John, what are you talking about? I got really bright kids. They're really motivated. They do well in school. They get good grades. All of that can be true, and they still can be bad at note taking. They still can struggle with, telling the difference between something that's important and something that's just interesting. Understanding the quality of resources, right? There are all hacks and traits and things and skills we develop to work around our deficiencies. And sometimes you can get away your entire lifetime with that, with those deficiencies, and they don't matter. But other times they can start to trip you up. So keep an eye on this. If I would encourage every coach at some point to do a little checking on this, probably early in the season, to see where the kids are at. And then you can decide how important it is do we explicitly deal with it, or do we kind of implicitly deal with it, or do we deal with it when issues arise? Then last but not least, it comes down to quizzing. So you're collecting the information, you have it organized in a way you can use it to study and learn from, and help out in the event of a test. And then what do? You start quizzing. Flashcards, Kahoots, released exams, sample tests, all that stuff I think is fair game and great. Two big things here at this point is one, make sure the kids don't get stuck on this idea of perfection. You don't need to be perfect to win in Science Olympiad, right? What you do is you just need to know more than the team next to you. And so ideally, the kids learn enough about everything on the list, right? They shouldn't just focus on a tiny subsection of the material, right? And try and be perfect with it. Because I think especially at regional tournaments, if you happen to compete in a regional and invitationals, if you end up doing invitationals, a lot of them for fossils, you're going to see images. I would encourage you to think about non-traditional. Well, you want to go beyond the obvious image, right? So the first one, when you put the genus and species in, or the name of the fossil in, and do like a image search in Google, you don't want to just go with the first one, right? You probably don't want to go with the first page. You want to find some more obscure ones. You want to try and find some ones where it's not blatantly obvious. It's not a perfect example, right? There could be some doubt here. You're going to want to challenge yourself with those. And then last but not least, I don't talk about this a ton when I pour knowledge, but again, I think with fossils, it has that potential. You could break this event down into chunks, right? And just worry about a certain subset of fossils, or just a certain part, or just certain types of questions. Whatever you do before the tournament, you want to make sure you pull the entire thing together. And the line I use is you practice like you play. So you're going to want a full-size test that you compete in a 50-minute time limit with your partners. I think that's incredibly valuable as preparation activity for any actual tournament and competition. When it comes down to resources, we got the Science Olympiad event pages. Because fossils is in divisions B and C, there's unique pages. We'll get resources up there, sample questions. As we get into invitational season and invitational tests become available to us, we'll go ahead and release those if we can. If you want more help, we got the starter packs in the store. It's notes on fossils, it's release tests. Wards has a fossils kit. So if you're looking for fossil samples, you want to see some new stuff, build your collection out. You can go to Wards and get that kit. The National Park Service has an entire section on fossils and activities and outreach around fossils. Same thing for the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History. They have a paleontology section that has teaching resources that could help you with this material. The Paleontological Society, again, has educational resources that you might find valuable. And I should have had it on here, but I deleted. I got in some other places. Again, museums are going to be huge, particularly natural history museums, are going to have a ton of fossils. The other place you might want to look for fossils that, depending upon where you live in that, like nature centers, departments of natural resources, they may have stuff on fossils, not necessarily the ancient stuff that's on the fossil list, but they may have things talking about how fossils are formed, because they're going to deal with and talk about kind of more modern, quote unquote, modern fossils, right? And things that's a little more recent. So again, don't sleep on museums, departments of natural resources, and nature centers. Now, finally, this is not the only opportunity to talk and learn about fossils in boot camp. I would highly encourage you to make time for the fossils live session on Thursday, July 11th at 11:10 Central. That's when Gary Vorwald, our national event supervisor for fossils, is going to share some stuff with you and answer questions. Gary is phenomenal. His wealth of knowledge about fossils and his absolute passion for the topic is incredible. Gary does an absolute fantastic job. I'm always amazed and always learn something when I get to hang out with Gary and listen to talk about fossils. And then we'll do a follow-up session around fossils later that day at 12:15. And this is an informal setting. So Gary's coming there without an agenda, without any planned things. So you guys get to drive this conversation. It's your questions, it's your ideas. It's so you can talk to Gary and get his help with things. Plus, you can talk to each other and share ideas, resources, concepts as well. So at that point, now's my turn. That brings us to the end of the presentation. I just want to say, hey, thank you for being part of Science Olympiad, and thank you for joining us at boot camp. I hope you've gotten something out of this session. I hope you get something out of all the activities, resources, and experiences that boot camp provides. I'm glad we're able to put it together and do this for you guys. I also want to remind you that should our paths cross at a Science Olympiad event during the 25 season, please don't hesitate to stop me and say hi. I'd love to meet you in person. I'd love to hear about your team and how your season's going. But in the meantime, I wish you a very restful and relaxing and recharging summer as we get ready for what I think is going to be an awesome season starting this fall.